we're going to look at how a complete catastrophe, a massive foreign invasion in the year 865, actually inadvertently forged an entire nation. I mean, the fact that we even speak English right now, or that a single country called England exists on the map, it's all thanks to the sheer devastation we're about to unpack.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because when I was looking through the sources, it totally flipped my perspective. It sounds completely counterintuitive, right? Usually when an unprecedentedly massive invading force lands on your shores, well, that's the end of your civilization, not the beginning of a unified one. But as we're going to see today, the arrival of a massive Viking army in 865 acted like this brutal crucible. It literally burned away the old world, and in doing so, laid down the very foundations for the modern nation of England.
Section 1. A divided island.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the change that happened in 865, we got to rewind just a little bit and look at the reality of early medieval Britain. Before 865, England wasn't England. It was this chaotic puzzle. After the Romans left in the 5th century, a massive power vacuum settled into what historians call the Heptarchy. Basically 7 main Anglo-Saxon kingdoms constantly squabbling, raiding each other, always competing for dominance. If we break down the balance of power, Mercia held the absolute largest share for a long time, especially in the 8th century during the Mercian supremacy. You also had Northumbria dominating up north, East Anglia over in the east, a bunch of smaller kingdoms jammed into the southeast, and then there was Wessex down in the south. They were intensely divided, just completely separate kingdoms. Now, Wessex wasn't always the top dog, but things really started to shift around the year 825. Under the leadership of King Egbert, Wessex secured this massive, game-changing victory over Mercia at the Battle of Ellendun. And this victory effectively established Wessex as the dominant power across southern England, absorbing those smaller southeastern kingdoms. King Egbert probably thought he had finally solved the whole puzzle of dominance in Britain. He had absolutely no idea what was coming across the sea, because despite this newfound strength, Wessex was still just one single piece of a deeply fractured island. Nobody was ruling a united England yet.
Section 2. The 865 Catalyst.
And this brings us to the ultimate disruptor. Now, what's really interesting here is that the Great Heathen Army was unlike anything the island had ever seen. I mean, sure, previously, back in 793, the Vikings, or Danes as the English chronicles called them, had famously attacked Lindisfarne. But for decades after that, they mostly relied on seasonal hit-and-run raids. You know, show up, steal some wealth, grab some gold, sail back home. But in 865, everything changed. A massive coalition force arrived in East Anglia. And this was no raid. This was an unprecedentedly large Norse force, led by hardened warlords, arriving with a terrifying new paradigm: absolute territorial conquest and permanent settlement. They weren't there to steal the gold anymore. They were there to steal the land itself.
And just look at the terrifying speed of their advance. It is genuinely breathtaking. They land in East Anglia in 865. Just 1 year later, in 866, they march north and conquer York, completely taking down the mighty centuries-old kingdom of Northumbria. Then, as we move into the 870s, they pivot back south and systematically carve up Mercia, the former supreme powerhouse of the island. In barely a decade, kingdoms that had ruled for centuries were just wiped off the map. It's honestly hard to believe how quickly these deeply entrenched powers just evaporated under the Viking pressure. Which brings up a massive, absolutely fascinating what-if that I couldn't stop thinking about while putting this explainer together. What if the Great Heathen Army, right after landing in 865, had decided to turn south and march directly into Wessex instead of heading north to York? At that exact moment, Wessex was going through a chaotic, rapid turnover of kings after the death of King Æthelwulf. They were going through kings faster than seasons. They were incredibly vulnerable. If the Danes had struck there first, the entire trajectory of European history would probably be unrecognizable to us today. But they went north. And the geopolitical earthquake of that 865 invasion left a stark, brutal new reality. Northumbria, conquered. East Anglia, conquered. Mercia, dismembered and hugely weakened. And then there is Wessex. By surviving those initial waves purely because the Vikings went north first, Wessex miraculously emerged as the sole remaining major Anglo-Saxon power. The Viking invasion inadvertently did something kind of incredible. It brutally cleared the board of all of Wessex's traditional English rivals.
Section 3. The Last Kingdom Standing.
So how exactly did Wessex manage to survive this apocalyptic threat when literally all the other kingdoms fell? Well, enter a young man named Alfred. In 871, the throne of Wessex passed to him. Now, Alfred was a fourth son,
Under normal circumstances, a fourth son like Alfred was destined for a quiet life in a monastery, maybe reading some nice illuminated manuscripts. He was definitely not supposed to be on the front lines of an apocalypse. But because of the early, tragic deaths of his three older brothers during this intense period of conflict, this 20-something guy found himself wearing the crown exactly as the Danes, having consolidated the north, turned their full, terrifying attention south.
The tension in this moment is just unbelievable. On one side you have Guthrum, the seemingly unstoppable Danish warlord hungry to complete the total conquest of the island. On the other side you have Alfred. By 878, following a devastating surprise attack in the dead of winter, Alfred and his desperately cornered forces were literally forced to flee into the treacherous marshlands of Æthelstan. The once mighty kingdom of Wessex was reduced to a few desperate, starving men hiding from Viking patrols in the freezing mud. The entire survival of Anglo-Saxon England was literally hanging by a thread in a swamp.
But here is where history pivots in the most dramatic way possible. So the crucial point is, in 878, Alfred somehow manages to secretly rally the remaining local militias. He launches a massive retaliation at the Battle of Edington, and he wins. Wessex forces decisively defeat Guthrum, pushing the Danes completely out of southern England. Guthrum is forced to retreat, accept baptism, and is permanently restricted to East England. This single victory didn't just win a battle, it bought the survival of the English identity. Alfred had definitively checked the Danish expansion and preserved Wessex, rightfully earning himself the title, Alfred the Great.
Section 4. Forging a United England.
But stopping the Vikings was truly only step one. Now, Wessex had a completely unique opportunity. Because the Great Heathen Army had effectively destroyed Mercia, Northumbria, and East Anglia, there was this massive power vacuum in Britain. Let's move on and see how this builds, because over the next few generations, the House of Wessex executed a brilliant unification playbook to expand right into that vacuum. First, Alfred stops the Danes and uses the hard-won peace to reform laws, build fortified towns called burghs, and create a bureaucracy to actually fund a standing army. Second, his son, Edward the Elder, goes on the offensive, conquering the Danish-held East Anglia by the end of 918. And third, Alfred's grandson, Æthelstan, brilliantly pacifies Northumbria and pushes all the way up to the borders of Scotland, achieving the full, unprecedented unification of England.
When I saw this title in the sources, it really hit me. By the 1920s, Æthelstan's royal charters began using this bold, brand new Latin title, Rex Totius Britannia, King of all of Britain. The abstract, almost impossible idea of a single, unified political entity on the island, something that even the Roman Empire had failed to fully achieve, was suddenly actually a reality. And with this 10th century unification under the House of Wessex came a true golden age. The borders between the old Danish-controlled areas, the Danelaw, and the Anglo-Saxon regions really began to break down. Trade expanded massively across the North Sea. Towns like London, York, and Winchester just boomed into these wealthy trading hubs. We start to see the emergence of a truly merged Anglo-Danish society, living and trading side by side. Why does this matter today? Well, to put it in perspective, if you've ever looked out a window at the sky while holding a knife, you are using Old Norse words that permanently entered our language during this exact melting pot era. Life materially improved as these cultures blended together.
Section 5. The Legacy of Wessex.
So, what's the ultimate historical payoff of this incredible era? Well, we started our journey with a fractured, divided heptarchy of competing kingdoms, constantly at war with one another, highly vulnerable to any outside threat. But by the end of the Wessex era, the reality forged by the descendants of Alfred was a consolidated, unified, incredibly wealthy kingdom of England. It is a completely different world from where we started, and it completely reshaped the balance of power in medieval Europe.
But, history loves a tragic twist. And this brings us to the infamous year 1066. King Edward the Confessor, a direct descendant of the House of Wessex, dies without a clear heir. His death triggers a massive succession crisis, culminating in the famous Battle of Hastings and the Norman Conquest. The legendary House of Wessex effectively dies out here as the ruling dynasty, and William the Conqueror and his Normans take over the entire country.
And this brilliantly illustrates the true ironic legacy of the 865 Viking invasion. By destroying Mercia, Northumbria, and East Anglia, the Great Iron Army eliminated Wessex's rivals. It left Wessex as the sole savior, essentially forcing the creation of a single, unified national identity just so they could fight off the invaders. So when the Normans arrived in 1066, they didn't have to painstakingly conquer a dozen petty, squabbling kingdoms. No way!
They were handed the keys to a centralized, pre-unified, highly wealthy country. The Vikings inadvertently did all the heavy lifting of state building for them. Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. Was a unified England inevitable? Like, would one of those squabbling kingdoms have eventually conquered the others anyway? Or did the modern nation of England, and the very language we're speaking right now, entirely depend on the terrifying devastation brought by the Great Heathen Army in 865? It is genuinely fascinating to realize how historical destruction so often acts as the crucible for the creation of our modern world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a completely new perspective on how the England we know today was forged. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.